Look at this exhaust plume. 3 jets, still firing 420 million kilometers from the sun at minus 150 degrees. See, water ice is as hard as granite. Sublimation stops. The rock should be dead, but it is not dead. It is burning. They told us 3 Atlas was fading. They told us the show was over. The jets would freeze. The object would go dark. For 2 months. That was the story. The mainstream media moved on. Case closed. But on March 3rd, the European Space Agency's JUICE spacecraft captured this image, and the story just changed. We are now 11 days from March 16th, 11 days until this object reaches Jupiter's magnetosphere. And if you watched my investigation in January, you know exactly why that matters. 3 things just dropped in the last 72 hours that NASA and the ESA are being very, very quiet about. First, the JUICE telemetry shows the 120 degrees stabilization jets are still firing in the freezing dark with no solar heat. Second, when JUICE try to scan the object's core chemistry, its ultraviolet spectrometer was blinded by a 1,665 megahertz electromagnetic pulse. Third, the trajectory has shifted again, a precision correction, and the new approach angle is exactly 8.8 degrees off the ecliptic, the exact tilt needed to align with Jupiter's Io flux tube. If you're new here, you have arrived just in time. The narrative is shifting. Make sure you are subscribed because on March 16th, we're going to see if this object does what every piece of evidence suggests it is about to do. Upload. Let's start with the anomaly that just killed the mainstream explanation, the cold burn. When I released my investigation on January 9th, we analyzed the Hubble data showing 3 perfectly spaced jets, 120 degrees apart, the exact configuration engineers use for reaction control, systems on spacecraft, thrusters that cancel wobble and stabilize rotation. The skeptics had a valid point. They said it is just a comet. The sun melted weak spots in the crust. Hot gas escaped through cracks. The jets formed randomly. And when it gets farther from the sun, the ice will refreeze. The jets will stop, and the object will go dark. That was a reasonable hypothesis. I expected it to be true. If 3 Atlas is a natural comet, then outgassing must stop when solar heating stops. Basic thermodynamics. So let's test it. On January 9th, the object was 1.8 astronomical units from Earth. Close. Enough for Hubble to capture detailed images. It was 0.4 astronomical units from the sun, still receiving significant solar radiation. Surface temperature was roughly minus 80 degrees Celsius. Cold, but not frozen solid. But by March 1st, the object had traveled an additional 280 million kilometers away from the sun. It is now 2.8 astronomical units out. At that distance, solar flux drops by 80%. Surface temperature has plummeted to minus 150 degrees. At minus 150 degrees, water ice is harder than concrete. Methane ice is rock solid. Carbon dioxide sublimates so slowly it might as well be a mineral. There's no mechanism for pressure to build. No expanding gas, no cracks widening. The comet should be a frozen dead husk. But the JUICE probe just proved it is not dead. On March 3rd, JUICE's wide-angle camera captured 3 Atlas from 400 million kilometers away. The resolution is not as sharp as Hubble, but the data is unambiguous. The 3 jets are still there, still firing, still spaced at exactly 120 degrees. And the electric blue ionization glow surrounding the object has not faded. If anything, it has intensified. Think about what that means. If the sun is no longer providing heat, but the object is still venting pressurized gas, there's only one physical possibility. It has an internal heat source. This is not residual warmth. This is not stored. Thermal energy slowly radiating away. If that were the case, the jets would weaken gradually. They would flicker and fade like embers cooling. But they are not weakening. They are holding constant output, which means the heat source is active. It is generating power right now. And if it is generating power in the freezing vacuum of deep space, it is not a rock. It is a machine. But machines running active power systems emit electromagnetic signatures, lots of them. And that brings us to the second anomaly, the one buried on page 47 of the ESA telemetry report, the static wall. While everyone was focused on the pretty pictures of the jets, almost nobody noticed what happened to JUICE's other instruments. JUICE carries an ultraviolet spectrometer called UVS. Its job is to map the chemical composition of planetary atmospheres by analyzing how different molecules absorb ultraviolet light. It is incredibly sensitive. It can detect trace gases at parts per billion. When the ESA commanded JUICE to scan 3I Atlas and measure its chemical signature, the instrument failed. The official ESA bulletin released March 4th describes the failure as temporary interference from cosmic ray background radiation. They claim a random burst of high-energy particles struck the detector at the exact moment JUICE aimed at the object, saturating the sensor and rendering the data unusable. Let's analyze that explanation. Cosmic rays are real. They're high-energy protons, an atomic nuclei traveling through space at nearly the speed of light. They can blind sensors if they hit at the wrong moment. It happens, but the odds of a cosmic ray striking the exact sensor at the exact microsecond JUICE locked onto 3I Atlas during a scanning window that lasted less than 5 seconds are astronomically low. And that is not what the raw data shows. If you dig into the ESA's published telemetry, the interference was not a random spike. It was a continuous flatline signal. The UVS detector recorded maximum saturation for the entire duration of the scan. No fluctuation, no decay, just a wall of electromagnetic noise. And it was not random noise. The frequency analysis shows a narrow band emission, centered at exactly 1,665 megahertz. 1,665 megahertz is the hydroxyl line. It is one of the most important frequencies in radio astronomy. It is the frequency at which hydroxyl molecules, the OH pair, that forms when water breaks apart, naturally emit radiation. SETI researchers call it the water hole. If an alien civilization wanted to broadcast a signal that astronomers would notice, 1,665 megahertz is the frequency they would use. But 3 Atlas was not broadcasting. It was jamming. When JUICE's ultraviolet spectrometer tried to penetrate the object's outer shell and see what it is made of, something on, the object responded. It generated a localized electromagnetic pulse at exactly the frequency most likely to saturate the detector. It blinded the sensor. This was not passive reflection. This was active defense and generating an EM pulse strong enough to blind a spacecraft. Sensors from 400 million kilometers away requires a massive directed energy output. That kind of shielding does not happen naturally. It requires a power source, an emitter array, and a targeting system that can detect incoming scans and respond in real time, which means the object knows it is being watched and it is defending itself, but running an active electromagnetic shield at that intensity burns through energy reserves at an insane rate. It is not sustainable for long missions. You would only activate it when absolutely necessary, which raises the question, if the object is trying to conserve power for a critical mission objective, why is it burning energy on defensive shielding? Now, because it is close. It is approaching the target, and it cannot afford to be scanned until the mission is complete. And that brings us to the smoking gun, the number that eliminates every natural explanation left on the table, the 8.8 degrees trajectory correction. For months, we've known the object was heading toward Jupiter, but heading toward Jupiter is vague. Jupiter is huge. You could miss it by 10 million kilometers and still pass through its orbital neighborhood. But 3I Atlas is not just flying by. It is threading a needle. The latest astrometry data from the Minor Planet Center published March 2nd shows the object's approach vector has shifted. It is no longer traveling along the flat plane of the solar system. It has tilted its orbit by exactly 8.8 degrees off the ecliptic, not 8.7 degrees, not 8.9 degrees, exactly 8.8 degrees. Why is that the smoking gun? Because 8.8 degrees is the exact tilt of Jupiter's magnetic axis relative to its equatorial plane. Let me explain what that means. Jupiter is not just a gas giant. It is a massive electromagnetic dynamo. Its interior is metallic hydrogen under unimaginable pressure that generates a magnetic field 20,000 times stronger than Earth's. It is the most powerful magnetic field of any planet in the solar system. Jupiter's magnetic field traps charged particles from the solar wind and creates radiation belts that would kill an unshielded human in minutes. But the field is not uniform. It has structure. It has highways. One of those highways is the Io flux tube. Io is Jupiter's innermost large moon. It is the most volcanically active body in the solar system. It spews sulfur and oxygen ions into space at a rate of 1 ton per second. Those ions get caught in Jupiter's magnetic field and form a donut-shaped cloud called the Io plasmatorus. But the ions do not just sit there. They flow. They follow the magnetic field lines connecting Io to Jupiter's upper atmosphere, creating a massive invisible cable carrying 5 million amps of electrical current. It is the most powerful natural electrical circuit in the solar system. If you wanted to harvest energy from Jupiter without entering it, you would drop a magnetic tether. You would let the current flow through your systems, and in a matter of hours you could recharge a starship's power reserves. But to do that, you have to approach at exactly the right angle. If your trajectory is too flat, you miss the flux tube entirely. You fly past Jupiter and get nothing. If your trajectory is too steep, you dive into the radiation belts or the upper atmosphere. You burn up. But if you approach at exactly 8.8 degrees off the ecliptic, you align your trajectory perfectly with the magnetic field lines. You fly down the barrel of the flux tube. You thread the needle. And that is exactly what 3I Atlas just did. The object burned fuel. It adjusted its trajectory, and it tilted its approach by precisely the angle needed to intersect the most powerful energy source in the solar system. That is not a coincidence. That is navigation. But there is a problem. Even if you successfully harvest terawatts of power from the flux tube, what do you do with it? You're an interstellar probe. You've been traveling for thousands, maybe millions of years. You just surveyed Earth. You collected data. And now you are leaving. What is the point of refueling if you're just going to keep drifting through the dark? Unless you're not just refueling, unless you're using Jupiter for something else, something much more valuable than energy. You're using it as a transmitter. This is the part that kept me up last night. The part that makes all the other anomalies make sense. If you're an interstellar probe, you have a problem. You need to send data home, but your home star is light years away, maybe tens of light years, maybe hundreds. Even if you have a powerful transmitter, the signal degrades with distance. It spreads out. It weakens. By the time it reaches the destination, is drowned out by background radiation. So you need an amplifier, something massive, something powerful enough to broadcast across interstellar distances. And Jupiter is perfect. Jupiter naturally emits powerful radio waves at frequencies between 10 and 40 megahertz. It is caused by electrons spiraling along the magnetic field lines, creating a phenomenon called synchrotron radiation. The emissions are so strong they can be detected by amateur radio operators on Earth using simple backyard antennas. But here is the critical detail. Jupiter's radio emissions are not constant. They fluctuate. They pulse. They change intensity based on Io's position, solar wind pressure, and magnetic field dynamics. If you wanted to encode information into Jupiter's radio emissions, you would not broadcast your own signal. You would modulate the existing emissions. You would inject energy into the magnetosphere at precise intervals, causing the natural radio output to spike and dip in patterns, dots and dashes, binary code data. You would use Jupiter as a galactic antenna. And to do that, you need two things. First, you need massive amounts of power, which is exactly what the Io flux 2 provides. Second, you need to time it perfectly. The upload window is short. You have maybe 6 to 12 hours when your trajectory, Jupiter's rotation, and the flux tube alignment are all synchronized. And that window opens on March 16th. The astrometry models show 3 IATLAS will reach closest approach to Jupiter's magnetosphere at approximately 1400 hours universal time coordinated on March 16th. At that moment, the object will be 420,000 km from Jupiter's cloud tops, directly aligned with the flux tube, moving at 32 km/s. If it drops a magnetic tether and injects energy into the magnetosphere, we will see 3 signatures. First, the Io flux tube will brighten. Visible telescopes and ultraviolet observatories will detect an increase in auroral activity at Jupiter's poles. Second, Jupiter's radio emissions will spike. Ground-based radio telescopes monitoring the decimetric wavelengths will record anomalous bursts that do not match natural modulation patterns. Third, the object itself will change. If it just spent thousands of years in hibernation mode and it suddenly has access to unlimited power, it might wake up. It might activate systems that have been dormant. It might transmit. And if it transmits, we will know. But here is the terrifying part. If it successfully uploads the data it collected from Earth, what did it send? What information did it gather during the 6 weeks it spent in our neighborhood? It mapped our atmosphere. It analyzed our electromagnetic spectrum. It detected every radar pulse, every GPS signal, every satellite uplink we are broadcasting into space. It knows we are a technological species. It knows we have nuclear weapons. It knows we have orbital infrastructure. It knows we are fragmented into competing nations with different languages and different militaries. That data is valuable. That data is intelligence. And in 11 days, someone somewhere light years away is going to receive it. But 3 IATLAS is not alone. And that is the part that should terrify you. A few weeks ago, I released a video analyzing the edge of the observable universe. We looked at 3 massive anomalies: the axis of evil, the CMB cold spot, dark flow, 3 independent measurements showing that the universe is not symmetric, that galaxy clusters are drifting all in the same direction as if something beyond the observable horizon is pulling them. One of the hypotheses I discussed is the pre-inflation structure theory, the idea that before cosmic inflation, the universe was smaller and matter was not evenly distributed. If a massive concentration of matter existed in one region before inflation, it would have exerted a gravitational pull. Then, inflation happened. Space expanded, faster than light. That structure was pushed beyond our observable horizon. But the galaxies that were already being pulled toward it kept moving. Momentum. They are still drifting in that direction today, billions of years later. Now connect that to 3 Atlas. If an advanced civilization detected that massive structure billions of years ago, they would know it as a marker, a signpost, a direction. And if you want to map the galaxy, you do not send a probe to every star. That is inefficient. You build a network. You position probes at strategic locations. You park them in the dark, far from any star, and you let the stars drift past you. When a star system comes into range, the probe wakes up. It detects gravity. It detects electromagnetic emissions. It fires its thrusters. It intercepts. That is exactly what 3I Atlas did. It was moving at less than 5 kilometers per second, relative to the local standard of rest, before it entered our solar system. In galactic terms, that is almost stationary. It was waiting. And when our solar system drifted into range, it woke up. It adjusted course. It intercepted. It surveyed. And now it is leaving. But if that is true, then we're not looking at a one-time visitor. We are looking at a node in a surveillance network that spans the galaxy. How many probes are out there? Hundreds, thousands, million. And where are they reporting to? If the dark flow is real, if galaxy clusters are being pulled toward a massive structure beyond the edge of the observable universe, then whoever sent 3I Atlas might not even be in our galaxy. They might be in the next supercluster or the one beyond that. We might be looking at a Type 3 civilization, a civilization that spans multiple galaxies, a civilization so advanced that surveying thousands of star systems simultaneously is routine, and we just drifted into their net. So here is where we stand 11 days from a Jupiter rendezvous. For 3I Atlas to be a natural comet, you have to accept 6 perfect coincidences. 1. The jets naturally aligned at perfect 120 degrees stabilization angles. 2. The water naturally separated into chemically pure coolant. 3. An internal heat source is naturally keeping the jets active in the freezing dark 420 million kilometers from the sun. 4. A cosmic ray naturally blinded juices spectrometer at the exact microsecond it tried to scan the object. 5. The trajectory naturally shifted to exactly 8.8 degrees, perfectly aligning with Jupiter's magnetic axis. 6. The timing naturally synchronized so the object reaches the flux tube on March 16th, the exact date when Jupiter's rotation and the magnetosphere alignment create the optimal energy harvesting and transmission window. 6 coincidences, or 1 assumption. It is a machine. It was sent here. It surveyed Earth, and in 11 days, it is uploading the data, which requires less faith. On March 16th, we're going to see what happens. I will be monitoring the Juno spacecraft telemetry. I will be tracking ground-based radio observatories. I will be watching Jupiter's auroras. And I will be here on this channel, breaking down the data as it comes in. If the flux tube brightens, you will see it here first. If Jupiter's radio emissions spike in non-random patterns, you will see the analysis here first. If NASA and the ESA go quiet, you will hear about it here first. Make sure you are subscribed. Make sure notifications are turned on, because the mainstream media is not going to cover this honestly. They're going to call it a solar storm. They're going to call it natural interference. They are hoping you stop looking, but we are not going to let them bury this. I want to hear from you in the comments. Natural coincidences or engineered mission. What do you think is happening? Drop your answer below. I read every comment. And if you want to understand the bigger picture, if you Want to know where the civilization at? Sent 3, Atlas might be hiding. Click the video on your screen right now. It is my investigation into the edge of the observable universe where something massive is pulling galaxy clusters toward a region of space we cannot see. The rabbit hole is deeper than one probe. The surveillance grid might span the entire cosmos. Click that video. I will see you there. Stay curious, stay skeptical, and keep watching the sky. I'd love to hear what you think about this, so drop a comment below. If you enjoyed our conversation today, please share this video and subscribe to help the channel grow. Every bit of support counts.